Hi, hello and welcome to a new video. Today I react to Geography in Russia again. I already reacted to it last year on the 17th of June. But at this time I didn't say everything I wanted to say. I want to make another reaction. Also, it was full best quality this time. Last time it was just standard quality. So here we are again. Geography in Russia. Russia is one of the most interesting countries in the world for me. I personally also want maybe to move later to Russia. There are of course also things I don't like about Russia, as with any other country in the world, but mostly it's interesting. And if you are from Russia, please send me also some recommendations or other videos or links to videos about culture and the people and so. And also the language. I started to learn Russian on Duolingo a while ago, and I will also do a lesson or just show you that. Let's listen to a bit Russian in this video. I'm not sure, but yeah, please like and subscribe. It would really help me out a lot, and my goal is to reach 100 subscribers by the end of this year. I mean, it's still a long way to go. It means the year is long, so it's just started the year, and maybe I even have more than 100 subscribers. But yeah, let's see. Please do your best. Just like and subscribe if you are interested in culture and so on, and languages, and my reactions in general. Also gaming. I play some games also. Anyway, I hope you will enjoy it. Please yeah, like and subscribe. And I want to say it too often, but let's now start with the video. Without further ado, let's begin.
Hey everyone, we've reached Russia, the big guy. You've probably heard of him. For this episode, I really wanted a real Russian to co-host with me. One guy immediately popped up. Say hi to Mr. Mike. Born and raised in Russia, in childhood, speaks the language, knows the culture. This dude is my go-to Russia guy.
Quick disclosure, I've lived here in the States 3 times longer than I've lived in Russia. That said, where I falter, this is a preemptive apology.
Well, thank you, Mike.
I mean, I watched many videos about Russia. On YouTube, also from Real Life Law, and from there's one specific video from Real Life Law I really like to also react to at some point in the future. It's about how Russia might become a superpower again. It's something with climate change and so, and how climate change doesn't affect Russia is the same way as it would affect, for example, the United States. But that's for another video. That's also interesting. I love it. Okay, let's continue.
Either way, it was either you or that Dimitri guy down my street.
The crackhead?
Oh, see how slim our options were? You're the best I got.
It's time to learn geography
now! Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs, here with Mike.
Russia is a big country that everyone has heard of. Big, unique, and
it covers, I think, 8% or 10% of the entire Earth's land area, and is kind of as large as Pluto. So I mean, I think they will also mention something like this in a moment. So let's see.
above all, it's a country many of you guys have been waiting for on this channel.
And this is gonna be a pretty big episode. We're gonna cover as much as we can without rushing into it.
Приветствуем вас на русский эпизод.
And Russian, the language sounds wonderful, beautiful, and I like it a lot. And also why I started to learn a bit, of course. And yeah, I mean, I had once a teacher from Poland, and she was talking on the phone to someone, and she was speaking Polish, but I asked her then if she would speak Russian, but she said Russian is more soft and Polish is more hard. But it sounded similar in my ears at this time. Maybe I will hopefully one day be able to see the differences or hear the differences. But yeah, I really have to learn more Russian, and I'm interested in this country.
Now, as we all know, by land area, Russia is the largest country on Earth.
The country is so big, it's difficult to even get an accurate two-dimensional flat cutout of the...
And something interesting about this, here on Wikipedia, Wikipedia Russia. I show you something. I mean, I don't care so much about this, but here I show you something. The Wikipedia article about Russia, the English Wikipedia article about Russia. And you see here, there's this little green thing is what they currently annexed from Ukraine and this conflict there. I mean, you Russian guys say it's a military operation. Most other countries say it's a war, so the name doesn't matter so much. I said it before. What's important is what's happening on the ground, and I hope the current ceasefire, which is happening right now, is also helping a bit to bring peace to this region of the world as soon as possible.
Nation due to the width of their land straddling a spherical arc on Earth's surface.
And with lots of space comes lots.
Moment.
The width of their land.
Yeah. I think here somewhere the Lake Baikal, there was also a town I was interested in, and of course Vladivostok and Volgograd here in the Caucasus. But yeah, and Moscow, of course, St. Petersburg, sure, also.
Straddling a spherical arc on Earth's surface.
And with lots of space comes lots of interesting geographical anomalies.
Russia is so big that it has about 1/8 of all inhabited land on Earth.
As I said,
and almost the same amount of surface area as the entire planet of Pluto. Russia is a transcontinental country that straddles both Eastern Europe and Northern Asia in a larger landmass known as Eurasia. It is often understood that the European part of Russia, where about 77% of the population lives, is everything west of the Ural mountain range, and the remaining 23% live on the east side. At about 6,600 miles or 9,000 kilometers east to west, the country covers 11 time zones and the longest border in the world with 14 different countries. Yes, even North Korea at the very narrow tri-point.
And it is a tri-point with North Korea, China, and Russia. There is also, I mean, there's on the one side this friendship bridge to North Korea between Russia and North Korea, and I think the border between China and Russia lies in a river, and there's this kind of river on where the border lines between Russia and China lies on, and yeah, maybe you even see here the bridge. I'm not sure if that's a bridge, but yeah, anyway. There's also a town nearby, a very small town, but the closest city where I would theoretically live would be Vladivostok. I mean, at least a few 100,000 people should live in the city I live in later, or possibly live in. Yeah, not just a few thousand, but a few 100,000.
With China. In addition, they recognize two more disputed areas that they border, North Ossetia and Abkhazia, as countries, even though the international community recognizes.
Yeah, there's also a conflict. There has been a war in 2011, I think, between Russia and Georgia also.
Recognizes these areas as part of Georgia. Also, the country has military bases in 9 countries abroad, including the breakaway state of Transnistria in Moldova. And keep in mind, the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, the world's first and largest space launching facility, is actually leased out to Russia until 2050 and acts as like a Russian exclave. The country is divided into 85 federal subjects.
I tried to learn the federal subjects from Russia also on cetera.com, where you can make geography quizzes. So it's very difficult. I had very low score. Maybe I have a link in the description to this video, but it was very it was not easy. It was very bad, you could say even, but it's still awesome and interesting. I have to learn it again. Maybe I will one day get it done. I mean, I know the 50 states of America, United States of America. Then I should also know the subjects, oblasts, kikes, and the regions. I'm not sure. He will explain it in a moment. From Russia.
2 of which are disputed, and all are divided further into 6 categories. The 46 oblasts or provinces, these are the most common subjects with direct control from the central government. Keep in mind the westernmost point of Russia is actually in this detached exclave known as the Kaliningrad Oblast. Then you have the 22 republics. These are nominally autonomous areas that have the right to their own constitution and language alongside with Russian, as many of them are inhabited by ethnic minorities with their own cultures. Then you have the 9 krais or territories, which are basically just oblasts but with a historical tied to being frontier regions, many of which are sparsely populated. You have the 4 autonomous okrugs or districts, which are like little sister areas that have a certain level of autonomy but are still subordinate to a certain oblast. These 2 oblasts are in charge of these 3 okrugs, whereas the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug is the only one not subject to any oblast.
That's very complicated, of course, but I think you can learn it. It's just difficult for me because none of these states really say something to me. Where in the United States, something like Georgia, something like California, Washington, these names are more. I mean, they have a. I can imagine something under them. But about Russia, it's different yet. But maybe one day I can also imagine something about every different oblast and republic and so on. I wish so.
Or cry. Then you have one strange unit known as the Jewish Autonomous Oblast, which was kind of like a deliberately created entity that was supposed to be a new home for Russia's Jewish population, even though today less than 1% of the population is Jewish, but it's still called the Jewish Autonomous Oblast. And finally, you have the 3 federal cities, the 2 largest ones, Moscow, the capital of the country, and St. Petersburg, as well as the controversial disputed Sevastopol, located on the controversial Crimean Peninsula that is claimed by Ukraine and Russia claims as the Crimean Republic. This is a tricky subject we'll talk about later. In short, these 3 cities kind of operate as their own regions and are not subject to any oblast.
Whew, and that was just the administrative division section. We didn't even get into all the other weird stuff.
Like how this guy wants to revive the House of Romanov and possibly buy.
I wonder how many of the things they are talking about are still true. I mean, in the moment, of course, Russia is very isolated, and I mean, at least from Western countries. I don't know how about Asian countries, but Western countries isolate Russia very much. So I'm not sure about how this will be, how this is in the moment. But interesting. I would so much love to visit Russia. Maybe I have the opportunity one day.
Land in the Balkans for a micronation.
Or how the California Independent Republic actually has an embassy in Moscow.
Or how they once had sovereignty over Alaska for over 100 years, known as Russian America, and was like, aha! I got a piece of America. How you doing, settlers?
Not so good.
Oh man, this war against the
I'm not sure where this is referring to. I mean, I don't know. The English name was confusing me, but I think that's the Turkish Empire. Or it was not called the Turkish Empire at this time. It was the Ottomans. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. I'm sorry. Let's continue.
Ottomans is costing me a fortune. I need money.
Whoa, there's a gold rush on the West Coast in California. Let's all go, now.
The Americans and the British Canadians might get closer and try to take over. It will cost more to defend my American territory that I don't even pay any attention to.
I think Russia should have kept Alaska. It would have been a nice situation today if Alaska would be Russian. Just interesting. I mean, alternative history is often interesting, so yeah.
Maybe I should just sell it. Hey, UK, you interested?
I've got quite enough Arctic tundra. I think I'm quite all right.
USA?
All that frozen, useless land, you better
It's also funny to see this flag with there's 37 stars. So there were still 13 stars missing.
sell it to me for cheap.
And that's how they sold it for only 7.2 million, which by today's inflation rates would be equivalent to about 130 million or about 2 cents per acre.
For what it's worth, though, Russia kind of got its general land territory we know today from the conquests, mostly from Cossacks that ended in the late 17th century, led by this dude.
What is a Cossack? Well, long story short, it's kind of like this.
I'm so sick of this pent-up aggression.
I like this always when they make this kind of imitating something through playing different roles, and so that's fun always.
I just need to get out of this town and get in a fight or something.
Hey, you're an intrepid guy with a death wish who probably wouldn't mind maybe dying. How would you like to?
I don't know much about the Cossacks, so I don't know about what they did and how they did it, and I mean, probably they just made Russia much bigger than it was before, but I don't know much about the background, so yeah.
To go out and get paid to do that for my country.
How?
Just like go out, make alliances with the locals, or I don't know, kill them. Just give me more land. It's an adventure.
Like a mercenary or something.
Let's not call it that, but something like that. And that's basically how Russia grew from this to this.
Moment.
But something like that. And that's basically how Russia grew from.
So this was originally Russia. It was much more into today's Ukraine and also Poland, I think, a bit. It was interesting. It was much more west than the modern Russia. Huh. I think when I just look for, here's Kiev. There, you see here. Here's Kiev. So it was much more in Ukraine and Belarus and so on. Let's continue. Here's Moscow.
this to this.
In any case, there's a lot more to the Russian scene than just political divisions. The capital and largest city is Moscow, where nearly a tenth of the entire population lives. It is the largest.
I definitely want to visit Moscow. Kind of. I mean, it's not communistic anymore. I know. You don't have to say this in the comments. But for me, Moscow is kind of the capital of communism. In a weird way, because I mean historically it's in definitive this case, and it's an interesting city. I have to visit it. I have watched a few videos about Moscow, but when you know some more interesting videos about scenery, awesome places to see, then just recommend them to me in the comments. Thank you.
European city, and as of 2020 is one of the top 20 largest cities by city proper on Earth, with over 13 million people. Here, of course, you can find the 3 biggest and busiest airports. Otherwise, St. Petersburg, the second largest city, has the 4th busiest airport. Just to skip away, St. Petersburg does hold the largest shipping port, the port of St. Petersburg, right on the coast of the Gulf of Finland. The country has thousands of islands and islets off its coast, mostly situated in the Arctic, but the largest one, Sakhalin, located in the Pacific. Going up, you see these 2 little guys here, the Diomede Islands. Yep, the big one on the left belongs to Russia, and the small one to the right belongs to the USA.
That's also awesome, interesting. I mean, I think the Russian island here is you can't go there. I think it's off limit for civilians or so. Maybe you can, and it's just not, there is not anything. But it would be interesting to be there, and there was even once an idea of people. I just watched a video, not just. I mean, I watched a video before where it was about the question if there could be a bridge between America and Russia through this over the with using the islands as stops for the in between. But I mean, it would maybe be possible, but I think the region of Russia, which is at this point, is so far away, and there are no highways which lead to the rest of the country. Most people live, but it would be amazing, of course. In this way, it would also then close the Darien Gap between Panama, between where there's no highway, where is this jungle where no one could build a street through because it is so too difficult. If you would also close this gap, you could drive from Fireland in Chile all the way to Singapore or Myanmar or Thailand. It would be amazing. It would, of course, no one would do this. Maybe someone would do this, but it would be not feasible for traffic. But it would be interesting. Just funny. Let's continue.
And they sit right on the international date line, effectively meaning that even though they are only about 2 miles apart, Big Diomede Island is an entire day ahead of Little Diomede Island. Speaking of which, they have about 23,000 miles of coastline, 5th longest in the world, mostly in the Arctic, giving them the largest EEZ claim over the Arctic Sea. The country has a few territorial disputes. In Asia, you have the Kuril Islands in the east with Japan, where both claim ownership over these islands just off the coast of Hokkaido. In the Caspian Sea,
I think Japan claims the first 2 islands in the chain, closest to Hokkaido, which is this big island here in the north of Japan. Just the first 2, I think. I'm not sure about the rest.
Kazakhstan claims these 3 islands that are currently under Russian control. And finally, you have the most notable dispute that has made all the international headlines recently.
I mean, when he would make the video now, of course he would also talk about other things Russia has annexed now. I don't say anything about how it is legally. It's not important. I think Crimea is more Russian than the things which they have now annexed in the military operation, in the war which is ongoing. I think they should make a peaceful solution to this. But that's something else. That's another topic.
Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula. In the shortest way to summarize, in 2014, Russian troops took over and essentially the entire area was annexed by Russia following a controversial referendum, as most people there are Russian and voted to secede themselves back to Russia. To this day, the international community does not recognize this referendum as legitimate, but the area is still de facto run by Russia. This means that even further than Crimea, the entire Sea of Azov is also disputed. Otherwise, if you look at the population density map of Russia,
that's also very interesting. You see that nearly everyone lives in the west. There are a few red spots in the east, but and everything is in the west. There's something this here which goes on into the east a bit, and also here in the south a bit, but only here and here it's a bit red in the east. Everything else is sparsely populated. Interesting.
Most people
I mean, I knew about this, but yeah, it's interesting to mention this. That's also, I think, why in the other video they said that climate change wouldn't affect Russia this much, because most of the largest cities of Russia are very, very far away from the coast. You see here, the biggest cities, also Moscow and so, are all very far away from the coast, and of course in the south also, I mean, the next ocean in the south would be the Indian Ocean or so. But yeah, anyway, let's continue.
people east of the Urals actually live close to the famed Trans-Siberian Railroad, the long
And I definitely want to travel with the Trans-Siberian Railway also. This will be... Sorry, there was something on my phone. This will be super interesting. I would love to travel with the Trans-Siberian Railway. I think it takes 7 days from Moscow to Vladivostok.
longest rail line in the world that traverses the entire country, effectively giving them access to other nations like Mongolia, China, and even further as North Korea. Travel gets even more complicated the further north or east you go. To this day, there are no main highways that reach the furthest eastern
That's what I meant. This Chukotka Autonomous Okrug, there's no highway which connects this to bigger cities in the south and in the west. So a bridge over to Alaska would be very, very unfeasible and very expensive, and also to build highways and so on. That's what I meant.
subject, the Chukotka Autonomous Okrug, and anyone wishing to go there must fly or probably take an uncharted boat from the other coastal areas along the Pacific.
Whew, that was a lot of information. So let's just skip over to the list of notable places.
Some of the top places you guys, the Russian geography peeps, suggested we mention in the video include places like Dargov.
I have not I liked the video before. Did I not? I mean, I'm subscribed to Geography Now, but I thought I would also have liked the video. I did not, so please like also. It's a good opportunity to mention this again. Please like also my video. You would do me a gigantic favor, and you would make this little cute monkey very happy if you would subscribe and like the video. Sorry, Jana, that I used you for this. The monkey is called Jana. Anyway, we continue with the video. The interesting places of Russia, that's also super interesting.
City of the Dead.
Lenin's mausoleum.
Is my
Of course,
we mention in the video include places
I actually intended just to go a few seconds below and be back. Now it's made it 10 seconds.
like Dargov City of the Dead.
Lenin's mausoleum.
No, Lenin's mausoleum. I want to go there also. It is kind of weird that they, I mean, kind of weird that they kept Lenin in this thing and everyone can stare on him, but I can also understand it. And yeah, I would definitely like to go there. And I mean, he's kind of the father of communism, together with Karl Marx and Lenin Engels. So
Izmailova Kremlin.
The Moscow metro stations.
Temple of all religions.
I have heard a lot of the Temple of all religions. I have heard also of this, but about the metro station in Russia. Temple of all religions. What does this mean, Russian guys? Is this a temple where, I mean, for Muslims, for Christians, for Orthodox Christians, or I mean, how do I need to understand this? I mean, I'm all for it. It's interesting and super interesting. So, and I like these colorful buildings.
Religions. Tsar-Bell.
The Dostoevsky Theater.
The Vodka Museum in St. Peter.
I mean, I don't drink alcohol, but vodka museum sounds still awesome.
Petersburg.
Hotel Ukraina.
Bolshoi Zavadsky Island Maze.
Freud's Dream Museum.
Whalebone Alley.
The Sovolki Monastery and Army Base in Gulag.
Ulan-Ude Ethnographic Museum.
The mummified remains.
Many of these things I can't really say much about because moment, there was again something on my phone. Nothing important. about most of the things which they mention in the video, like this buildings, all this monuments, and this things I can't say much about. I think it's interesting and super awesome, but I would need to go there first, and then I could say something. But it sounds wonderful and interesting.
Of this guy.
The most famous statue probably being
The Rocker and Cohorts woman statue, and there's another statue in Volgograd which I'm super interested in seeing.
the worker and kolkhoz woman. They've even have the tallest
This statue in Volgograd, that's Motherland's core statue. It was built, I think, in remembering of the people who died in the Stalingrad battle. I would love to go there to this city. Super interesting. If I have the option one day, I will go there. Maybe I will also then make some videos there, but that's something else.
statue of a woman in the world.
There are, of course, so many churches, mostly Orthodox.
So many amusement and theme parks.
And Mike, the most top famous places would probably be
The Red Square, St. Basil's Cathedral.
St. Basil's Cathedral. Sorry. Also, these colorful buildings, super interesting. I have to go there. I say this about many things, but I'm sorry if I repeat myself, but I'm very fascinated by this kind of things. I'm not religious also, but it's just interesting as being curious about other places.
The Winter Palace, and Peterhof.
All right, well, that was a lot of heavy information. Russia is no joke when it comes to contrast.
Much like the landscape, which brings us to...
Now, when it comes to the physical makeup, Russia is kind of like an ice cream shop. I mean, yes, most of the country experiences cold and freezing temperatures, but being the largest country on Earth area-wise means you're going to have a lot of different physical regions, so it's kind of like different flavors of cold, right? What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, for one.
The country starting in the west begins with the flat and relatively lush European plain. From there,
I have heard about this European plain a lot. It also was mentioned in the video about why Russia is invading Ukraine, and from also from real life now, by the way, right channel. So throughout history, many countries or many empires, like also the French and the Nazis later, used this very flat open plain to march through Eastern Europe into Russia, and yeah, that's what I will put the link to the other video in the description, and maybe we'll also react to it later, but yeah, that's something else.
you have the Caucasus Mountains in the southwest, where you can find the highest point, the tallest point in Europe, Mount Elbrus. Just to skip away, you find the Volga River Delta, the largest delta in Europe, fed by the Volga River. The Caucasus and Ural Mountains together make up the boundaries of what is considered European Russia. And from there, Asia begins with this massive area known as Siberia, divided into the West Siberia.
I think when Siberia would be an independent country, it would still be the largest country in the world, which is interesting.
Siberian Plain, where the mighty Ob River flows, the North Siberian lowland, and the Central Siberian Plateau. Just south along the border of Mongolia, you have the Sayan and Yablanovi Mountains, where you can find the largest lake of Russia and the deepest in the world, Lake Baikal, which, by the way, has some of the only freshwater seals on Earth. It is fed by a tributary on the longest river of Russia, the Lena, which flows northward into the Arctic. From there, you have all these other mountain ranges that shield the Kolyma lowlands, and finally, you reach the highly volcanic Pacific coast, with the Koryak and Kamchatka ranges that extend with an archipelago southward, all sitting on the Ring of Fire. In fact, the Kamchatka and disputed Kuril island chain have more volcanoes out of anywhere else in the country at about 200, about 60 of which are still active. The three most active and continuously erupting ones being Karimsky, Kizimen, and Shivoluch. Keep in mind, up north, the Arctic Ocean is actually divided into 5 separate seas on the Russian side.
I mean, he didn't say much about this region here, I think. He said this is a mountain range which has this lowlands in it this year, but I don't know. Did he say something about this, or did I just not got it? And yes, just tell me in the comments.
the Chukchi, the East Siberian, the Laptev, Kara, and Barents Sea. And here you can also find the northernmost point of Russia's domain, the Franz Josef Land Islands. They are right above Nova Zemlya, which has the largest glacier in Europe, and also the site where the largest atom bomb ever was dropped. Fun fact. Amidst all this land, about 60% of it is classified as being part of the Siberian taiga or taiga forests, which are forests situated in colder climates with deciduous trees like oak, birch, and spruce. This is the largest forested area on Earth, yes, even bigger than the Amazon. Much of the south of Russia is classified under the steppe region zone, or massive expanses of grassy land with few trees, ideal for agriculture with moderate temperature and sunshine and moisture. Otherwise, the further north you go, the less hospitable the conditions get, and you reach the tundras and cold deserts, where very few people dare to live, but many resources are locked away, such as the numerous oil and natural gas reserves hidden in the interior and offshore sites in Siberia and the Arctic. Russia actually has the largest natural gas reserves in the world, making them the largest natural gas exporter and the largest.
Which is of course, I mean, it's amazing and interesting, but it's also kind of not good. I mean, it made Russia large and I mean, not large maybe, but rich, but it is not and powerful. But it is still the fossil energy things with the climate change, and I mean, I don't like it, but it's much better, of course, than taking or buying LNG gas from the United States, because shipping this stuff and transforming it first into this gas form is very not good for the environment, and it takes very much energy to transform it, and then shipping it over the Atlantic. Of course, it's worse than just using the pipelines which already exist. But that's also something else. Let's watch. Continue to watch.
Oil producer in the world. Most of these petroleum resources are managed by state-owned companies like Gazprom, Lukoil, and Rosneft.
Whew, lots of land and lots of stuff happening in it.
Russia's economy ranks as the 11th largest by nominal GDP and 6th largest by purchasing power parity in 2020.
Back to resources though, agriculture in Russia is kind of limited. Only about 0.1% of the 1 billion acres of arable land is used for permanent agriculture, and they only have a short 2 to 4 month harvest season.
This is due to much of the area covered in full or semi-permafrost, which is not ideal for crop production.
And can someone please explain to me what permafrost does with the soil, and why is it so difficult to farm on it or to make it usable again for farmland? Please explain to me in the comments.
One thing it does produce though are these interesting geological formations known as pingos, which implode into massive craters which fill up into ponds, making the landscape the most trypophobic triggering region on Earth.
Oh, get it away from me!
All the strange cold water and wind erosion is also the reason why Russia has incredibly distinct remote rock formations found all over.
Yes, that also looks super interesting when I can say this.
Strange cold water and wind erosion is also the reason why Russia has incredibly distinct remote rock.
This looks also amazing. It's just beautiful.
Rock formations found all over along the taiga and steppe regions.
This means almost all farming happens in the southern areas of Russia where the climate is slightly warmer and accommodating.
Nevertheless, even with the limited industry, Russia still ranks #1 in producing certain crops such as buckwheat, barley, oats, sugar beet, currant, gooseberries, and raspberries.
In addition, they are the largest palladium and diamond producer in the world.
When you think of Russia immediately, you think of coal. I mean,
I have watched a video about the city that they are mentioning in a moment.
they do have the coldest inhabited town.
Oymyakon, where winter temperatures can get down to something with like minus 70 degrees Celsius, which is, even for me, very, very, very cold.
On Earth.
But Russia actually has the largest temperature range on Earth recorded as well. The town of Verkhoyansk can go from 37 degrees in summer to -68 in winter, making a 105-degree difference.
Technically, the fringes of the Caspian Sea in the south are also considered semi-arid desert zones, making them some of the warmest regions in all of Russia.
And some of the surrounding landscapes you could swear were in northern Africa or the Middle East, with sand dunes and camels.
And speaking of camels, animals. The country has over 260 mammal species and nearly 800.
What is a mammoth? Mammoth is anything which is, I don't know, what is mammoth specifically? I don't know. Probably I know if you just explain it to me a bit, but maybe just Google also. Hi, I'm back. I just had to do something. I'm back now with the video. Uh, let's continue with the video.
Bird species.
Animals you may have heard of, such as the Siberian tiger, Asiatic black bears, Eurasian lynx.
In the tundra regions, you can also find polar bears, reindeer, walruses, narwhals, Arctic foxes.
In the warmer areas,
The Arctic foxes, of course. Here. Moment, sorry. Very, very, very cute. I love Arctic foxes.
in the warmer areas, you have wolverines, as well as that strange saiga antelope with its weird elongated nose.
Of course, it wouldn't be Russia without the national animal, the Eurasian brown bear.
So yeah, Russia. It has deserts, and it can be over 100 degrees, imploding permafrost, and active volcanoes constantly erupting as we speak.
And finally, to finish all of this segment off, food.
Food, yeah, I don't eat much. Much different food. So, I can't really say much about this, but yeah. Let's continue.
Of course, due to the vast, wide domain and numerous ethnic groups found in Russia, the country has an enormous range of regional cuisines.
One common theme you'll notice is that Russians tend to pickle a lot of their vegetables since the harvest season is short and crops are not available in the colder months.
Anyway, just add a dollop of sour cream to your soups, take a shot of vodka, and bam, you're in the Russian zone.
Some of the more widely known and popular dishes you guys, the Russian geography suggested: stroganoff, blины, chicken Kiev, голубцы, lots of different types of rye bread, many types of pyrogi. They have their own way of doing ice cream and meringue desserts. Caviar is a big deal in Russia, especially from sturgeons. Many soups were a big soup and salad culture. You have things like щи, борщ, солянка, уха, щавелевый. Salads include vinaigrette, olivier.
And they celebrate it on New Year's and they eat it on New Year's.
It's not a party unless that salad's involved.
They also took it from the Belgians or something, right?
Olivier, what was this? I heard about this.
Уха, щавелевый. Salads include vinaigrette, olivier.
Olivier, I think I have heard about this is kind of a special salad they eat on New Year's Eve before. Interesting.
Yeah.
And they celebrate it on New Year's and they eat it on New Year's.
It's not a party unless that salad's involved.
They also took it from the Belgians or something, right?
No, there was a Belgian guy who worked in a Russian restaurant, and then one of his sous chefs ended up stealing the recipe.
Stole from the Belgians New Year's, got it. Now, we could go on, but it would take forever because Russia has over 180...
What is this background about the Olivier, if you know? The salad with the Belgian restaurant as well, or the Russian restaurant in the Belgium? I mean, tell me if there's something on it, or it's just a joke, or I don't know. You know better, probably.
We recognize ethnic groups which each have their own distinct culture.
Speaking of which, I think that's just about the right time to transition to... In regards to Russian people, Fyodor Dostoevsky once said, "It's frightening to see how free a Russian man's spirit is, how strong his will. Being a Russian carries a powerful meaning to the Russian people. It's a title of honor and pride many of them take."
The country is made up of about 143 million people. It is the most populous nation in Europe, and as of 2020, the 9th largest country in population on Earth.
I think right before Russia, when you take take a look on the countries and the population and then make a list of who's the most populous nation and so I think the country before Russia is Mexico. Mexico has 127, I think. The 9th, and then Mexico is the 10th. Japan is a tiny bit below Mexico. So yeah, before is Mexico. And after after Russia is Mexico, and before Russia is, I think, Bangladesh.
About 80%
With 172 million or so.
of the country identifies as ethnically Russian, and the remaining 20% come from one of the 180 or so ethnic minorities found throughout the country, the largest one being the Tatars at about 3.7% and Ukrainians at about 1.4%. From there, you have everything else from the Bashkirs, Chuvash, Karelian, and so on. Keep in mind, many of these minority groups are East and Central Asian in their heritage, like the Yakut and Tuvan and Altai peoples, whom speak Turkic or Mongolic-based languages, and are not Caucasian like the majority of people that identify as Russian. They use the Russian ruble as their currency, they use the types C and F plug outlets, and they drive on the right side of the road.
Russian, of course, is the national language. However, the republics are allowed to have their own co-official languages as well.
Oh, and speaking of which, Russian cursive is like the most mind-blowing sight to see.
Now, with Russia, you have a lot of backstory, but the best way to probably start off is by understanding the Slavs.
In Europe, there are three main powerhouse ethno-linguistic groups: the Germanic, the Latin, and the Slavic. Slavs are the largest one, and Russians make up the highest population of Slavs.
Their roots are documented from Roman times, and they have spread all throughout Eastern, Central, and Southern Europe.
With the exception of a few outliers like Poland and Croatia, the majority of Slavs in the world have a background in Orthodox Christianity, which was kind of like a further stemmed thing from the Byzantine Empire.
If you don't know what any of that stuff is, basically in like the 4th century, Europe was like,
Oh no! I'm dying! The Germanic people keep attacking! I'm losing money and nobody wants to claim Caesar as divine! Help me, my predominantly Hellenistic Greek-influenced subjects to the east!
Good luck, I'm doing my own thing. I also made my own capital, and I'm ditching that polytheistic stuff for Christianity.
And then in the 11th century, it was like...
So what's your problem? Why do you want to split up?
well, besides the secondary dogmas we disagree on, we most
You have to tell me more about this segment where there's this Western Roman Empire thing, and also this was the split of the church. I think it is the split between Orthodox Christians and Catholic Christians, but you have to tell me more about this and maybe explain some things. I don't know so much about this part of history.
mostly don't like your practices. We don't think the Pope has any authority over the church.
Yeah, but you guys have patriarchs.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing. Those are like regional managers. Also, you guys have way too many creepy statues. We believe priests should be allowed to marry, and we kind of like growing out our beards.
Well, yeah, well, at least we play actual musical instruments during Mass.
There's a lot more that goes into it, but getting into the theological discrepancies between the two would take forever to explain.
In any case, less than half of the population of Russia actually adheres to the faith, and about 30% of the country identifies as either spiritual but not religious, or unaffiliated agnostic or atheist. Aside from all
I'm atheist.
that, it is important to note that not everybody in Russia is Slavic or Orthodox.
I already made a video explaining about these, so we don't really
I will also react to this video maybe later, but yeah. Interesting. Russian republics.
have to talk too much about it, just watch the video. But basically, you have everything from the Turkic, Mongolic, Circassian, Uralic, and even Inuit peoples in the far northeast Arctic regions.
They even have the westernmost Buddhist community on Earth in Kalmykia.
I read about this too. Yeah, Kalmykia. I think it's an interesting place.
Interesting, bet you didn't know that. Now, compared to the rest of Europe, Russia does have a high birth rate and immigration rate.
Nonetheless, they also have a relatively high death rate, especially amongst men. In fact, today, women outnumber men in Russia.
And I think this is partly also because of the Second World War and the millions of Russian soldiers who died in the war. And when you have not seen the video, I recommend highly to you to watch The Fallen of World War II. You can either watch my reaction to it or just watch the video itself. The Fallen of World War II. It's an amazing video. And in this video, you also find out that more than something according between 10 and 20 million Russians died in the Second World War. So maybe this has still an impact on the on how many women and men there are in the country today. I'm not sure, but it could have an influence, and maybe also this with the young people making too extreme sports. But that's just a theory of me with the Second World War, that it has still an impact on this. But yeah, let's continue.
At a 1 to 0.84 ratio.
Yeah, there's a lot more women. In Russia, the competition amongst women is kind of visible. You explain.
It's not uncommon to see women dressing up in full presentation mode with heels and nails done, even just to go to the store to pick up milk.
To dive further into the social dynamic, you have to kind of understand Russia has gone through a lot of eras throughout its history.
Basically, they've had kingdoms, invasions, expansions, wars, empires, unions, and the most notable era, the 20th century communist era.
The word has an almost ubiquitous connotation with the country.
I am communist. I believe in a society where everyone is equal, where everyone has the same rights, but it's not just enough to have these rights written down somewhere in a constitution or so, but people have to really, and I kind of steal now the formulation from Second Thought, they have to, or share the formulation, have to be able to use this rights to I mean, Second Thought said in the video, it's not enough that you have the right for education, but you have also to have the possibility to use this right. So, when I will have a link to the video from Second Thought where I have this formulation from. But when it's not enough that you, for example, just have the right for an education, but you can't spend any you can't educate yourself because you have not enough money, because you have not enough time, because you have to work all day to just survive. So then you have also not the right to education to basically. But yeah, he used a bit, maybe a few other words or so, but he basically meant the same thing. So go to Second Thought and subscribe for him. He's an amazing socialist in the United States. So yeah, communism. That's I believe in a better society where people are free of the binds of capitalists and can just live their life in a peaceful way. And a real, true communism, there will also be no wars in the world anymore. Also a great ray of how a communistic world could look like is the song from John Lennon, Imagine.
Of Russia.
This is why you hear a lot of those distinct Soviet communist era words and phraseologies used in media like proletariat, bourgeoisie, means of labor, comrade!
They were the first nation to extensively kick off and implement the political ideology constitutionally after the October Revolution, and furthermore, they spread it abroad.
I mean, that's kind of what the whole Warsaw Pact and Eastern Bloc things were during the Cold
And
War.
that people now think so bad about communism is also, I mean, they confuse about something which happened in this country and which maybe many people suffered or some people suffered, but also in the capitalistic society, also in our current world, many people suffering, and it's because of capitalism that they suffer. So blaming the Soviet Union for the things which which were bad at this time is also kind of stupid. I mean, maybe it was not even a real communistic or socialistic country, the Soviet Union, but they at least tried it. And nowadays, people just say, "Oh, we are so afraid of communism. We can't. It must be something very terrible." And because so many people died, but right now, many people died since decades. Many people die every day through starvation and sickness, because we don't care about people who can't afford medicine, who can't afford their food. In Africa, people die just because they don't have enough money for eating, for buying food, and for what? And people who then blame always just communism for this and say communism can't work are also idiots, because I mean we never really tried it. Some countries try it also right now. Maybe China is a bit communistic. I don't know. I don't think so, but it is possible. Vietnam tries it a bit. Cuba tries it a bit. Venezuela maybe even. But we all just focus on the many negative things which happen in these countries sometimes, and that people are suffering there. But we forget that also in our West world, in a free democratic Germany, United States, Canada, UK, there are also people who suffer. And people in the global south, in Africa, in South America, in parts of Asia, they also suffer. Because we think that capitalism is the best thing in the world. Because we think this, people are suffering and dying every day. So, yeah, think about this. I will maybe also make a video about communism and socialism and so on another time, but right now we are here in Russia again, so yeah, enjoy the video. I guess let's continue.
And it goes even further than that.
All right, we just destroyed those Nazis. Awesome job, man. You know, Russia, it was really cool working with you. You're all right.
Yes,
and now the United States want to build up a capitalistic Germany. Let's watch.
мой друг. It was quite pleasure destroying real enemy.
Well, I guess my European friends and I should help Germany set up a free market system. Privatize their corporate
Privatizing is the worst thing you could do with infrastructure like water supply, electricity supply, energy supply is more general thing. and food, and so it should not be privatized. To think that privatization would increase or make things better is also stupid. Anyway.
Policy and stimulate the cash flow through competitiveness to get them back on their feet.
No. Me and my friends will help set up collective system that mobilizes and encourages proletariat to function efficiently by state regulations with no independent red tape loopholes.
Oh shit. Is this really happening?
Da, I believe it is. I
think also the United States, or at least the powerful people in the United States, realize that socialism and communism is better for the common people, for the normal common people, but they of course want to hold their powers. The capitalists want to keep the powers they have right now above everything. They want to stay strong. Like it's of course they want to keep their powers. It's disgusting but naturally and understandable. But anyway. The video is already longer than the old Russian reaction. So, and I have still over 10, 11, 12 minutes to go. So, I guess this will be over an hour long, this video. Which is not bad. I wanted it to be longer this time. So, let's just continue.
East, you take west.
And in the 50s, it was like...
I influence north, you influence south.
And in the 70s...
I support north.
I support south.
And so on.
Which begs the question, what exactly is communism? Although there are...
I just explained to you already, but let them also explain.
Many schools of thought and varying definitions. In the shortest way of summarizing, communism is a philosophical, political, social, and economic ideology and movement derived much from the writings of Karl Marx.
The ideal ultimate goal is to establish a common ownership and means of production by the people and the state, or in the simplest...
It is very simple, actually, as far as I understand it. You produce, if you are a worker, if you are someone who produces bread, if you're a baker, if you work in a bakery, then you produce your bread, you produce your Brötchen, you produce your everything that you have learned to do. So you do your own thing. Someone who makes shelves, someone who makes beds, someone who makes tools. Of course, they continue to produce specific things they have learned to produce. A teacher continues to teach, and so on and so on. But the only difference is that they don't do it for money, and that they can, if they want, and they want, of course, because everyone needs, for example, to eat and to drink and so on. They can take the things they need for themselves. For example, in the supermarket, everything would there would not be any price anymore. You would just take the things you need, not too much. And there's also the difficulty because people are greedy sometimes. But it's the ideal situation. You take what you need and you don't take too much. And for example, when you ask now what is about luxury things like high big televisions or the most beautiful places to live, the houses, I will answer to you that this luxury things should be specifically and primarily for people who are sick and old. Because sick and old people, for example, if you have cancer, then you have more right to have a beautiful house than someone who is younger and not sick. Just for example, just an idea. There are many different ways of maybe contribute the different goods to society, but I think the luxury things should be primarily there for sick and old people, so they could either become healthy soon again or enjoy the time when they are old and in a beautiful way. So, and for example, someone who has 3 children, a family with 3 children, should have the right for a bigger flat than someone who lives alone, but in our current world has just so much money that they can just have a big flat, but they don't need it. So, it's very complicated, and I will make a more detailed video about this later. But yeah, it's super interesting, and I am full supporting this.
Form, you don't technically own anything. Everyone technically owns everything on paper, but the state gets first dibs and distributes what it deems as most efficient, technically, kind of, but not.
It's really complicated, and I recommend to you. I will also put the link in the description from Second Thought, Socialism, Communism for Absolute Beginners, or something like this. He explains it much better than I admire him and his work, but and some things I can also explain. But if you want a more detailed explanation, then join his community, go to his Discord, and ask questions there. I think his community is much more knowledge. They can help you, and they can give you the information that you maybe desire. Let's continue.
It's weird.
Anywho, after the fall of the Soviet Union in '91, they changed their system of operation. Legislatively, on paper, Russia classifies itself as a federal dominant party, semi-presidential constitutional republic, with an emphasis on a heavily state-run economic model and Russian conservatism as a popular ideology. This party...
United Russia, I think, is the name is also written there. It's a party where Putin is also, I think, the chief of the party in the moment. Anyway, yeah. It's a big conservative party. There's also a communist party in Russia, which is also in the parliament, and so I don't know how many seats they have, but they're there. They exist still.
Russia holds about 3/4 of the seats in the federal.
Is the red maybe then the communists? I'm not sure.
Federal Assembly.
And it's semi-presidential because the president is head of state, whereas the prime minister is head of government. However, it's a lot more complex than that. Mike, what would you say?
So, this is a country that is notoriously known for changing the rules as they play the game. I sort of see it as an oligarchy.
Okay, so that being said, let's highlight some of the notable cultural traits and accomplishments that Russians are known for.
For one, Russians were pioneers in the space race and kicked off the age of space exploration.
Here's my buddy Destin from Smarter Everyday talking about it.
All right, Paul, if you're going to talk about Russia, you've got to talk about aerospace engineering because they are impressive. It all started back in the day when a Russian visionary named Tsiolkovsky came up with this momentum balance for rockets, which came to be known as the rocket equation. Back in the early days of spaceflight, the Soviet Union kicked off the space race by launching Sputnik, the first satellite in space. Moved forward through the space race, Yuri Gagarin, the first human in space. That was a really big deal. Fast forward to today, and you realize that Russia and the United States are not just collaborating, there's a full-on partnership between the two nations, no matter what political situation.
I think right now Russia has left the cooperation with NASA or with the space agency of United States. I don't know if they will join it again or if they will really step out of this, but I think they have announced something like this also over the conflict in Ukraine. Which is sad because that's a long partnership, but yeah, maybe they will not step out, maybe they will join again or something like this. I don't know what the future will hold, but yeah, that's sad.
Going on the ground, these engineers, NASA and the Russian aerospace industry, they've been working together to make human space exploration possible. The International Space Station, one of the most amazing things ever made by humans, has been a platform for persistent human presence in space since the late 1990s. I love this thing. Also, the Russian Soyuz spacecraft, developed in the early 70s, has proven itself to be the workhorse of human spaceflight. This stuff is awesome. Thanks for letting me say that. If you're doing a video about Russia, you have to talk about rockets because Russians are good at rockets. Why don't you have a segment for each country about the rockets that are like I know how you edit. You're gonna cut me off now. You could have a.
And aside from the space,
I mean, it was obvious that he would be cut out, but yeah, I knew the video, of course, but it's interesting. And I myself think a space exploitation or exploration and its exportation is also fascinating and interesting. I would love to see mankind to have kind of maybe even on a different planet, a station, or maybe even a city or so. I mean, it would be amazing. I don't like who no, it's sometimes you forget this names Elon Musk is this mission of Elon Musk to fly to the to Mars. I think it's maybe a bit. I mean, it would be amazing. I don't know if it will work, it will function, but it would be of course amazing. I don't like Elon Musk, but space exploration is awesome and interesting. I would of course also like to travel to a different planet. similar maybe to Star Trek. Let's continue.
Race, there are many discoveries and inventions attributed to Russian innovators. Here's just a few of them that we will put on a full screen montage.
They even invented the game Tetris. In fact, their theme song is a Russian folk song called Korobeiniki. Ой, полным-полна моя коробушка есть и ситцы, и парча.
This dude Mendeleev also created the earliest form of the periodic table, and some elements are actually named after Russians and Russian places, including the
Who was what was this? Yes, Moscovium. That's interesting.
including the guy himself.
They're also the pioneers of stem cell research and numerous surgical procedures like heart and lung transplants.
Even amongst the diverse republic areas, there are some universal Russian customs and traits that transcend regional boundaries.
All Russians take holidays and
The video is now 1 hour long. I just paused to say this. Let's continue.
festivals very seriously and enjoy their times of celebration. Christmas was effectively brought up to New Year's, and instead of Santa Claus, they have Ded Moroz, basically translates to Grandfather Frost. Later iterations give him a little sidekick, Snegurочка.
Otherwise,
And here I think when he mentioned this sidekick, I think I thought that he meant like a girlfriend for him, but it's his granddaughter. So anyway, it's that's in a different video I mentioned that I earlier thought that this woman would be his girlfriend, but in fact it was his granddaughter. And in this video, through this video, I thought that it might be his I thought sidekick would mean something like girlfriend, but it is his granddaughter. So let's just continue.
Basically translates to Grandfather Frost. Later iterations give him a little sidekick, Snegurочка.
Otherwise, all over you have other festivals celebrated like these. Women's Day is a huge one.
It's a common misconception that Russians are genetically acclimated to the cold.
Explain.
We just handle the cold better because we bundle up better.
But you guys do have that like banya sauna culture, and you guys jump into the ice water a lot, right?
Oh yeah.
In addition, Russians are known for excelling in a
It's amazing to jump into this cold, icy water. I would not do this probably, but I mean, yeah, maybe I would, but it looks very cold.
range of sports, most notably ice hockey, wrestling, figure skating, and gymnastics. They have consistently ranked high in the Olympics and ranked the #1 medal winners twice for the winter seasons of 1994 and 2014, where they hosted in Sochi.
Which has a stream of following controversies. Chess is a huge part of their culture. The game of cold logic rewards cunning and has always spoken to the Russian. Some of the top chess players in the world have come from Russia.
The 1830s Romantic era was sort of seen as like the golden age of Russian writing.
Some of the top notable authors like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, Chekhov, given the honor and prestige of Russian literature.
Russians have an incredibly long Rolodex of folk music that dates back centuries,
and many native instruments are still used to this day, like the bayan accordion, the sviral flute, strings like the domra, guzli, and the most famous of all of them, the triangle-shaped balalaika.
Every region has their own style of dance,
but the most internationally well-known styles probably being the troika and prisyadka.
Russians know how to put on a show. The world-renowned Russian ballet has been operating since the late 17th century, and everyone knows that Russians are some of the best circus performers in the world, excelling in acts like juggling, acrobatics, contortion.
Russia has many artists spanning across a wide spectrum of genres, movements.
And I know that most of these painters or writers. I knew about this one, Leo Stoy. Who was this? This one writer I knew about. I think he wrote this famous book, which the name I forgot, of course, right now. But anyway.
And everyone knows that Russians are some of the best circus performers in the world, excelling in acts.
You see here a bit under her skirt. Anyway, that doesn't matter. I just noticed it. And
it's like juggling, acrobatics,
yeah, please, female watchers, don't think that I'm too pervert. I'm just a normal guy. So, yeah.
Russia has many artists spanning across a wide spectrum of genres, movements, and styles.
Russia also has a history of animation.
It wasn't until 1935 that Soyuz-Multfilm, Russia's largest animation studio, was started. We all grew up on this. Ну погоди, спокойной ночи, малыши, Чебурашка, Ёжик в тумане.
Otherwise, what are some last-minute things you would like to tell?
I would, when you have some nice videos about or animation videos, or recommend me something from this studios or from this figures you just saw, then also just mention them in comments. I would be interested in this.
Tell us about what it means to be Russian, Mike.
Without trying to be dismissive, Russians kind of like to fetishize their own suffering. It's like Russians don't live, they survive, not other things. It's considered weird to smile at people you don't know.
Why is that?
We don't trust you. Never give a knife as a gift. It's seen as a severing of ties. Russians are a very hospitable folk. Many will invite you into their homes and will display either sadness or offense if you refuse. Once you've made it in, they will often bribe you to stay with things like tea, conversation, booze. In Russia, middle names are not chosen by their parents. You are born with one. It is your paternal name. So my father's name is Yuri, therefore my middle name is Yurevich.
And that applies to women as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Women, you get a male name for your middle name. All right, and with that said, here's a brief condensed history of Russia.
Early dispersed Slavic tribes.
Rurik the Rus unifies them.
The Kievan Rus.
Vladimir the Great.
Mongols invade.
Ivan the Great.
Ivan the Terrible.
House of Romanov begins.
Peter the Great.
Catherine the Great.
Crimean War.
Serfdom abolished.
Alaska sold to the U.S.
Russo-Japanese War.
World War I.
Rise of the Soviet Union with Lenin's Bolsheviks.
Royal Romanov family is deposed.
As depicted by that incredibly accurate cartoon.
Communism!
Lenin dies. His body is weirdly embalmed and put in display, but okay.
Stalin dictator years.
World War II.
And I think also when we have been talking about moment. I want this one picture. Moment. I'm not sure if I really move forward.
But okay.
Stalin.
So now I wanted to just have this picture. So Stalin. I mean, he has done many terrible things, but also he did some great things. He saved the Russian people from the Nazis. I mean, if he would have not did the certain things, some of these things, the Nazis would have maybe run over Russia, and many more people would have died. So, yeah, that's one thing. We have all to be grateful, or at least all Russians should be grateful for him, because maybe they would have not live when he would not be there. Other people, of course, were killed through him or through the state where when he was governing. He was very, I think he was very afraid of other people, or very. I don't know how to describe it in English, but definitely he was kind of crazy, but also we have to be thankful for him, because he decided together with Churchill and other people the Second World War, and the outcome of this war.
Dictator years.
World War II. Germany breaks agreement and tries to invade Russia.
Big mistake.
Cold War begins.
Nuclear arms race and space race with the USA.
Cuban Missile Crisis.
Summer Olympics.
And Cuban Missile Crisis has also an awesome video about this from also real life law about I don't know the exact day when it was, 14th, somewhere in April I think, where the world nearly ended. I have not reacted to this video. I will maybe later do this, but it was this one day when in the Cuban Missile Crisis, where this submarine from the Soviet Union was coming close to Cuba. It was discovered, and then they forced the nuclear submarine to resurface, and but they had also a nuclear torpedo on board and could have used it against the American fleet, and this would have probably started the Third World War, which I'm grateful that it never happened. And this one guy on the Soviet submarine, there were 3 officers on board, and they needed for firing the torpedoes. All 3 agrees. All 3 of the officers would need to say yes to this, and 2 said yes and 1 said no. And this one guy who said no kind of saved the world at this time. I will have a link to this video and also react later to it, but yeah, it's awesome and interesting.
Olympics in Moscow.
Gorbachev reforms and wins a Nobel Peace Prize.
Boris Yeltsin wins first popular presidential election.
And Yeltsin was, the United States supported Yeltsin in his re-election, against some other guy who was a communist, but and Yeltsin was very, I think, terrible for the Russian economy and Russian people because life expectancy, I think, also decreased in his time. Many things were not so great in this time, but he was installed from the United States in power, and later he helped also Putin to become powerful.
Fall of Soviet Union.
Chechnya unsuccessfully tries to break away.
Putin voted in for the first time, serves 2 terms, then after a brief hiatus, voted in a 3rd time.
Business and digital era boost Russia's economy.
Georgia-Russia war.
Russian troops take over Crimea.
Controversial referendum.
And here we are today.
And there's a lot more we could have expounded on, but there.
And this video came out 2 years ago, so of course today things have changed again. But yeah, he cannot cover this. I'm interested and curious about the Ukraine episode, which will come up next year. This year, I mean. He's right now working on the Uganda episode, and then after this will be Ukraine. I will react to Ukraine. You will see.
There isn't enough time, so if you'd like to add anything, please write it in the comments.
In any case, we've already mentioned some famous Russians in this episode, but here's a list of some more notable Russians, historic and modern.
Some of the most famous authors include people like these, but the most famous ones might be
Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Vladimir Nabokov, Nikolai Gogol.
a lot of famous actors.
I don't know nearly any of them, I think. Maybe even none of them. But if there is anything any cool videos you want to recommend to me, please do this. I would love to get more knowledge about all of this.
And directors, but some of the top ones being people like
Klara Rumyanova, Anatoly Papanov, Vladimir Vysotsky, Andrei Mironov, Anton Yelchin, Alla Pugacheva, Valery Syutkin, Boris Grebenshchikov,
statesmen and war heroes like
Alexander Nevsky, Georgy Zhukov, Mikhail Kutuzov, Valentina Tereshkova, Vasily Zaitsev, Alexander Pakryshkin,
tons of athletes like these.
Lev Yashin, Olga Korbut, Irina Rodnina.
And there's a lot more. Please add them in the comments if we missed any.
Yeah, those are just my favorites.
As you can see, Russia is not just a country, but almost like its own world in itself.
And speaking of the world, that brings us to...
I always make here the guess how this country gets along with other countries, and of course I made already a reaction to this, but I mean right now I think Russia gets along only with some Asian countries like China and India, kind of, maybe, and also some other countries which are not. I mean, Syria and North Korea. I think they have even recognized the annexations as legitimate. But I think Syria or Bashar al-Assad just do everything what Putin wants him to do. I think more or less. I mean, Russia has helped him a lot to keep control about his country, kind of. So yeah, and other countries are mostly neutral, I think. But just a very few amount of countries, so Europe, Canada, United States, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand have put sanctions on Russia. The most are neutral. The most countries in the world are neutral in this conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
Now, with Russia, diplomacy has played a very unique role throughout the past few centuries, even before Cold War times.
As a transcontinental nation, they've always had kind of their hands in both European and Asian affairs, but it doesn't really stop there.
For Africa, 7 countries had governments that were actually influenced by Marxist ideology.
It's also interesting. Mozambique, Ethiopia, Somalia also, Equatorial Guinea, Republic of Congo, Angola, Benin, and Somalia. Somalia, I just thought Somalia would be also written there near Ethiopia, so I was a bit confused when I saw it up there, but interesting. About Benin, I didn't know this. Angola, Mozambique, I knew. Ethiopia, I also didn't know, but interesting.
Brought in partially by Russians during Cold War times. These countries developed the closest ties diplomatically with Russia. It also explains why the flags of Angola and Mozambique have images inspired off of the former Soviet hammer and sickle emblem. In Asia, things go all the way back to the era of expansion when Russia was conquering lands east of the Urals. Today, 4 countries in Asia are categorically classified as either constitutionally communist or led by a communist party.
Yeah, that's also something I have to say something about. I mean, I don't know about China, North Korea, and Laos, but in Vietnam it is. I mean, they have also a communistic party, but it is also, as far as I know, not really communist. I mean, they call themselves communists, but I don't know how communistic they really are.
Party, primarily influenced by what was back then communist Russia. They are China, North Korea, or the DPRK, Vietnam, and Laos. Russia is one of the few countries that had ties to North Korea after the Korean War, as they influenced certain aspects of their Juche ideology, and even during the most isolated years, Russians still had relatively easier access to North Korean travel and business. During war times, Russia also played a pretty strong role in the influence of various sides in Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam. Today, Vietnam is one of the favorite hotspots for Russian tourists in Southeast Asia. With China, relations are generally amicable, although in the 50s there was the massive Sino-Soviet split in which China was like, look, Russia, it's cool you introduced the concepts, but we're gonna run communism our own Chinese way and we don't need you to chime in anymore.
Nonetheless, today China is one of their closest allies and biggest trading partners.
Which is interesting because with India, relations have been relatively good after the Indo-Pak War, in which Russia sided with India against Pakistan, who is an ally with China. And today, Goa is a huge hotspot for Russian tourists as well. Either way, all three are members of the BRICS countries, which also include Brazil and South Africa. 5 emerging world regional powers that have agreements on things like mutual benefit and development. Cuba and Venezuela are probably the best Latin American friends, Cuba being the only country in the Americas that fully adopted communism and played an important role in the Cold War tensions. With Venezuela, it's a little complicated. Under the Chavez years, Russia was close with trade and military cooperation, but after his death, Russia vied to support the succeeding Maduro presidency, which was seen as invalid by many across the world, and from there things got even more complicated amidst the protests, and Russia vowed to support Maduro's side even more if military action was required. The USA is like the forbidden friend, shaking hands together with both fingers crossed behind their backs.
I think the conflict in Ukraine is also mainly about a conflict between the United States and Russia. So, I mean, United States influenced Ukraine very much. They have basically Ukraine under their control, kind of, because they support Ukraine the most. And yeah, if Ukraine, if United States wants something to happen, they can make something to happen. If the United States would want to have peace there, they could have reached it, I'm sure. What's this?
Politically, everything has to be incredibly strategic and not all the rules apply when they play. After the Cold War ended in 1991, relations warmed significantly, but then the US involvement in Central and Eastern Europe made Russia distrustful again, especially with the 1999 NATO interventions and
Also that NATO was taking more lands into, I mean, you know, more countries to the east of Germany joined NATO. This was also maybe a reason why that the relations were not so good anymore.
the Balkans. From there, it's a back and forth ping pong game. I'll set up missiles in Poland, I'll build a base in Venezuela, I'll flirt with Ukraine, I'll give asylum to Snowden, and so on. As people...
Snowden is also by now Russian. I mean, he became Russian citizen, I think, through Putin earlier this year or someday. Let's just finish this video. It's already very long.
Although the Russians and Americans actually get along pretty well. The USA has the 4th largest population of Russians in diaspora, and many famous Americans have Russian ancestry. When Americans meet a Russian, they might curiously ask questions about what being Russian is like, but at the end of the day, they enjoy the same drunken shenanigans. Ukraine is kind of like the best frenemy with Russia. They have the largest population of Russians outside of Russia at over 8 million, and it is incredibly complicated. Putting all the controversial areas aside like Crimea and Donetsk, Ukrainians and Russians may not always get along on paper, but they have an incredibly long history and they understand each other very well. It's even more interesting when a Ukrainian and Russian marry each other. When it comes to their best friends, however, most of you guys, the Russian geographers, mention 3 countries: Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Serbia. Serbia, in essence, is kind of seen as like Russia Jr. with a little Balkan spice. Both were once communist powers in their own right, both follow the Eastern Orthodox branch of Christianity, both write in the Cyrillic alphabet with few differences, both are opposed to the whole Kosovo thing, and Russians are welcome with open arms in Serbia. Serbians even sometimes say they are one of the 300 million, referencing the entire Russian global population domestically and abroad. Kazakhstan and Belarus have always had close ties, and the Russian language is even co-official in their countries, and both were former USSR states. Kazakhstan has the 2nd largest population of Russians abroad at over 3.6 million, and they are kind of seen as like the breadbasket country to Russia, as their environment is more suitable for agriculture. Many food supplies come to Russia from Kazakhstan. Belarus is like Russia's girlfriend who takes many cues from her boyfriend's life.
Which is funny if you think about, you know, the head of states of the both countries. Like, I mean, it's just some funny thing. So.
style. The heads of state even play hockey together. The majority of Belarusians actually speak Russian instead of their native tongue Belarusian. This in return, however, has kind of prompted a sort of re-Belarusification period for the country, and they are now trying to reclaim their roots instead of just imitating Russia. Nonetheless, Belarus will always be one of Russia's biggest cheerleaders.
In conclusion, Mike, I think you should take this.
Russia is an old and contradictory country. It's beautiful but scarred, eloquent and clumsy, cunning and simple. Its people are proud but damaged, resilient and defensive. Russians are unique but numerous, and if you should be so lucky to meet one, you'd be hard-pressed to forget them.
Stay tuned! Rwanda is coming up next. Hey guys, Art here with me. Just remember, we got Geography Now t-shirts and merch going on. We even have these new gym sacks that I just launched on the website.
These are awesome.
Feel free to support us on Patreon at patreon.com/geographynow, or just subscribe to this channel, tell your friends about it. That's how you can support as well.
I work out because I'm insecure. That's...
I also support Geography Now on Patreon, so you do so as well if you have enough money and if you can afford it. Subscribe to his channel. Please subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. Write something in the comments, something about how I'm wrong about communism, something how you agree with me about this or that, or recommendations for other videos, or just things where I ask you questions about culture, about people, about Russia in general. Please do so, and yeah, I hope we see each other again in the next video. And yeah, this will be the video for today. Today is the 7th of January, and it's Christmas in Russia, so happy Christmas also.